In the late summer of 1977, in Reno, Nevada, a local ambulance service had just hired a dispatch assistant named Charles William Davis Jr. from Maryland. His resume read, Volunteer Assistant Chief of Staff, Laboratory Technician, Electrician, and Security Guard. But nobody knew that before that, from 1974 to early 1977, he had already approached and murdered at least 4 women, all under the guise of offering help. But 2 weeks before he got that job, on July 20th, 1977, 2 police officers pulled over his Volkswagen Beetle for a stolen license plate. David Horan and Gary Hartman, on routine patrol, had noticed something off about the plate, so they did what they always did and stopped the car. The owner, Davis, admitted the plate was stolen but refused to say why. After Davis allowed them to inspect the interior of his car, Hartman found a CB radio under the seat. They confirmed the radio had been stolen and arrested Davis for theft, transported him to the county jail. In the county jail, Davis insisted he was innocent and showed investigators a receipt from a Baltimore store, claiming he had bought the radio legally. So the theft charge was dropped and Davis walked free. However, further investigation turned things around. The radio was actually purchased with a stolen credit card, and the cardholder was Carol Willingham, who had been sexually assaulted and robbed in Baltimore months earlier. Police immediately arranged for Willingham to see if Davis was her attacker. Then the moment she saw his photo, she recognized him as the man who had assaulted her. Shortly afterwards, authorities issued an arrest warrant, but by the time police got to Davis's house, he had already left Baltimore and vanished without a trace. On August 31st, an informant told police about Davis's whereabouts. He and his fiancée had fled to Reno, where he was working as a dispatch assistant at a local ambulance service. The next day, September 1st, with the help of Reno police, Davis was arrested. 3 days later, he was extradited back to Baltimore. But during the return trip, at a brief stop in Jessup, Davis suddenly told the officers escorting him that he wanted to confess something about the death of 23-year-old Peggy Pumpian. In the interrogation room, facing recording equipment, Davis not only confessed to Peggy's murder, but also voluntarily described what happened to 24-year-old Kathleen Cook. The police had thought they were just chasing down a stolen radio and an assault case. Instead, they got pulled into 2 murders. On New Year's Eve 1975, Davis was at a nightclub looking for a female social worker. Months earlier, he had lost a custody battle and been stripped of his son's guardianship. Davis had decided the social worker was the reason he lost it, so he wanted revenge. Kathleen was at that same nightclub celebrating the new year with her husband, and she happened to bear a slight resemblance to the social worker. Then Davis lured her to the parking lot with the excuse that her car was blocking his, and drove her away. Along the way, Davis realized he had grabbed the wrong person, a complete stranger with no connection to him whatsoever. After hearing Davis's explanation, Kathleen straight up demanded he let her go. She warned him she was engaged to a high-ranking Baltimore police officer and he would pay dearly for this. But Davis didn't let her go. He pulled over at a vacant lot near a shopping center in Catonsville and raped her. During the time, Kathleen never stopped fighting back. She kept threatening and humiliating Davis, mocking him as impotent and unpopular with women. In the end, those words enraged him. He pulled out a .38 caliber revolver and shot her 4 times, then stabbed her repeatedly until she stopped struggling. On August 24th, 1976, Peggy was driving on Interstate 95 and got lost. She wanted to ask for directions to the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, and along the way she pulled over and asked Davis for directions. After a brief conversation, Davis got into Peggy's car, saying he knew a shortcut. But the moment he got in, he pulled out a revolver and robbed her. Peggy figured Davis would just take the money and leave, but Davis wanted more. He sexually assaulted her at gunpoint, and in the end, he fired 5 times in the chest, killing her. Then he wiped his fingerprints from Peggy's car and drove to New York to establish a credible alibi. 8 hours later, Peggy's body was found. When police recovered the bullets and ran ballistics tests, the barrel rifling marks matched the weapon used in Kathleen's case perfectly. Police confirmed both cases were committed by the same person, but it wasn't until Davis confessed that they knew he was the killer. On February 23, 1977, Willingham ran into Davis on the street. Just like with Peggy, Davis tricked her into his car under the pretense of helping her, drove her to a wooded area outside the city, and beat, robbed, and raped her. The day after his arrest, Davis was formally charged with 2 counts of murder. A number of high-ranking law enforcement officials organized a meeting to discuss how to prosecute him. Since all the murders had occurred in the Baltimore area, the prosecutor's office was worried that intense news coverage would compromise jury impartiality, so they decided to move him elsewhere and try him separately. Davis was first sent to Allegheny County to stand trial for Kathleen's murder. In early 1978, the jury found him guilty of first-degree murder and illegal possession of a firearm. On April 12th, he was sentenced to life in prison. Then the prosecution charged him again with Peggy's murder, and in April 1979, he received a second life sentence. Later, Davis additionally confessed to another aggravated sexual assault, as well as the murder of Lydia Norman. At the end of 1974, a 23-year-old woman's car broke down outside Baltimore. Davis happened to be driving by, offered to help, and gave her a ride, but he didn't take her home. He dragged her into nearby woods, sexually assaulted her, and tried to strangle her. After the woman had apparently died, Davis assumed she was dead and left the scene alone. Some time later, the woman regained consciousness, struggled back to town, and received treatment. After recovering, she described Davis's appearance to police, who produced a composite sketch based on her description. That was the earliest clue Davis left behind, but nobody connected him to that sketch. On September 11, 1975, 16-year-old Norman, a student at Randallstown High School, went out on a date with Davis. When Norman refused his demand to have sex, an enraged Davis sexually assaulted and strangled her to death. In early 1979, Davis was transferred to Anne Arundel County to stand trial for Norman's murder. For the third time, a jury found him guilty, and he was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after serving 48 years. During the trial, he showed no expression whatsoever, remaining silent and calm throughout the entire proceeding. Later, Davis's background was uncovered. He was born on June 18, 1947, in Baltimore, Maryland. Public records about his childhood were sparse. All that was known is that his father was a local police lieutenant. As an adult, he cycled through numerous jobs, working as an electrician, security guard, laboratory technician, and volunteer assistant chief of staff at a Baltimore volunteer rescue squad. In the early 1970s, he married and had a son, but the marriage didn't last. He eventually divorced and lost the custody battle and was stripped of his child's guardianship. This thing hit him hard, and it led him to harbor a grudge against the female social worker and to kill Kathleen. From this point onward, the level of violence in his crimes visibly escalated. Because he had a police lieutenant for a father and had spent time in a volunteer rescue squad, Davis knew the Baltimore area's emergency systems and police operations inside and out. He used that knowledge to get close to victims and cover his tracks, which was exactly why police never suspected him all those years. His crimes were primarily about rape, and murder was usually driven by impulse, whenever the victim challenged his control, refused, resisted, or like Kathleen, provoked him. Beyond that, he had a signature element when he struck. After killing a victim, he would actively call police and provide clues about the body's location, as if he were observing their reactions and drawing some kind of satisfaction from it. After his conviction, Davis served his sentence in Maryland's prison system and was transferred between multiple facilities over the years. Just when everyone assumed he had confessed to all his crimes in 2024, Howard County cold case investigators tracked him down again. They wanted to ask about an unsolved case from August 24, 1975. 20-year-old Rosen Sturtz walked into a bar that day and never came home. Her body wasn't found until that December in woods near Columbia. The cold case investigators found a 1981 audio tape in the files. Back then, Howard County Police had interrogated Davis about this case, and he had indeed mentioned certain details. But during that interrogation, police showed him an old photo of Rosen. Davis failed to recognize her. Because of that, the case could never be closed, remaining unsolved and shelved for nearly 50 years. This time, the cold case investigator, Corporal Wade, brought a photo taken 1 month before Roseanne's death. When Davis saw it, he nodded and admitted that Rosen was one of his victims, and he described how that night he got into an argument with Rosen at the bar, then managed to lure her to a secluded area, sexually assaulted her, and killed her. Even though the state prosecutor had granted Davis full immunity back in 1981, meaning he couldn't be additionally prosecuted for this case, the case could finally be officially closed. Later, Roseanne's family issued a statement after learning the truth. "We were grateful to have all the case details, learned Roseanne's actual date of death, and received the closure we have been praying for all these years, finally put to rest the answers we never had." Davis used to crave media attention, wanted his crimes remembered by the world, made anonymous calls to authorities directing them to where he had left remains. But in a way, the women he hurt deserve to be remembered far more than he does. Rosen Sturtz, Lydia Norman, Kathleen Cook, Peggy Pumpian, and the women who escaped with their lives.